Thank you, sir. All right. Happy Wednesday. So hope everybody's having a good week. We'll go ahead and jump into the announcements and then go towards the agenda as well. So all of the announcements, reminder, Family and Friends Day is this Friday. And also this was from Slack. There is another one that has been scheduled in June, and the link is available towards that merge request that added that to our calendar. So things to look forward to. There were a few items that I found noteworthy from the Engineering Week in Review that I thought were worth highlighting in this particular conversation. First one is about dogfooding a new CI feature, and it's around caching, multi-caching. And since we, for the analyzers, work on top of the CI, what's underneath our feet is worth knowing about. And so this is something that's worth being aware of and watching. Next one is about end-to-end testing. There's a new automation toolkit that's in beta and is for the GitLab end-to-end test. So being aware of that is also important to us. The next two are from security. Number one is there's an inventory of dependencies that are being built. So this is something that we should be aware of that is being built out. And this is also related to another initiative that's within AppSec as well, that will have some impacts about, that could have impacts about how we do dependency updates within our own projects. So being a participant in this process is worthy of our time. And the other one is related to Sentinel-1. There's been some configuration changes that should lessen the performance impacts on all of us within engineering. So please continue to speak up if you're impacted by Sentinel-1 itself, and be aware of how it is configured. And the last one is worth knowing about, and that's it's typically not a good idea to use static files persisted on disk that as a shared resource between multiple features. And so there's some guidance that is coming that has been added to the docs around this, and that's the note from Sean. That's highlighted there. So if you want the EMR or the link to the documentation, both are available for more information there. Next, something we celebrate every single week, features and high priority bugs closed in the past 7 days. There's been quite a few. So if you want more information about what was closed and how it was closed, please click through to see what happened there. And Diago's not here. Would someone like to play to speak in his stead? If not, I'm happy to do so.
I'll take it. Please join me in welcoming Brian Williams to the Protect Container Security Group. Brian, welcome. And actually, if you want to just do a brief intro, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, sure. So I'm joining as a senior backend engineer on the Protect team, reporting to Tiago. And before this, I was a security engineer at HEV, who is a Texas grocery company. So if you live in Texas, you probably know them. If you don't, you probably don't. And before that, I was doing research and development at White Hat Security. So I've been a cybersecurity professional for the past 5 years, and I decided that I wanted to change to engineering. And I'm really excited to that. And I'm so grateful to Todd and everybody else on the team for giving me this opportunity.
At White Hat, were you there when Russell Handorf was there?
Who?
Russell Handorf? Or not the same
No,
time?
I don't think I knew
Okay.
him.
All right, you want to continue on number 5, Thomas?
Yep, absolutely. There's a tradition that is coming to the section from our friends over in Protect and Threat Insights, Team Days. That's something that Lindsay is mentioning here. We're trying to figure out a date and any ideas about what these might look like. So there's a link to the issue, kind of describing more about what it is and also trying to solicit ideas. So this is certainly something that looks like a lot of fun. And so please contribute to this. And Neil, you called the last one. So floor is yours, sir.
Yeah, just an announcement. So we had a live learning series thing yesterday. There were 2 sessions. They were both bad times for me, so I had to watch the recording, which was fine by me. Actually worked out while I was listening to it. It was awesome. It's about rest ethic. So the gentleman who wrote Time Off, it's a book he promoted, and he came and spoke to us a few months ago. He came back to talk about his new thing called Rest Ethic, and just a really nice collection of Q&A tips. And it was ultimately an awesome reminder to everybody to take time off, but also take more time off. So plug in that.
And I'll just remind everybody, I literally took like every Friday off for like a month, and everything was fine and everything didn't burn down. And I'm less stabby now. So I recommend everybody try that.
All righty. I'm going to go ahead and get us into the agenda. So the first one was from Cam. I'll go ahead and speak for him. There was a feature that we were discussing in, it's either the last week's iteration of this meeting series or the week before. I don't remember which, and haven't had a chance to go back through the agenda, where we're looking at release evidence. And so Cam has done some investigation about artifacts. And so, he's got a note here about artifacts paths and also to the report type JSON file that we typically, if we don't have that within our GitLab template, then it does not include, then that is not included in the release evidence feature itself. And so what Cam is calling out is that this particular JSON file is available from the pipelines page anyway. And it's not a privacy concern because so authentication and authorization requirements do apply to the download the file itself. And so this is quite a good bit of investigation from Cam, and much appreciated. Any questions on this? Because I fumbled to the delivery.
Yes, like when I first read the Slack thread, I thought it had to be named a certain way and put in a certain path. That's incorrect. I don't know. I can go research, because the thing is, I actually do want to start including files in release evidence, but I only want to include some files. So I need to figure this out.
Yeah, there appears to be a naming convention as well as a means by which we declare an artifacts within these pipelines that determines whether or not these files are included. What that pattern is, I don't have internalized.
But if I go as the release, like look in the user docs, it's a naming convention plus a declaration, and then boom, magic, in theory.
In theory.
Cool.
In theory.
I will test the theory and report back.
Right. Sounds lovely. All right, I'm going to move on. Also speaking for Isaac. So severity levels, how we use them and how they're defined is not consistent. And so that's what Isaac is trying to get at with this question, this item here. We've got a lot of different tools and a lot of different ways in which severity is defined, whether and it's I mean, I'll speak for static analysis. Within SAST, it's inconsistent. It depends on the tooling. So this is a big topic for us, and so how can we go about standardizing this? And so I know Lindsay has linked to something, and I don't see her here, so I'll speak for her. There's a related issue in that since code quality is has come to static analysis, the code quality severity levels do not match the static analysis severity levels that we have within our vulnerability filters. And so rationalizing that is something that is being looked at within UX. And my question is that there's something, there's an initiative that Mark put in from vulnerability, Mark put in about standardizing on CWEs or some other related framework to help derive severity. Might this be one and the same? Like, should rationalizing severity levels be tied to a standardization on something like CWEs? So I'll pause there for commentary and questions.
So I had some initial comments on the merge request that I'll summarize because I have strong opinions about this from past discussions. But this is specifically on a page that shows a table of mappings between the underlying analyzers and what textual severity we apply, which is something like high. If this work is around quantifying what high severity means, I mean, I think that there's a lot of value in saying typically this would map to like the CVSS range, but it feels a bit disingenuous to say that, because if something like the PHP security audit tool only provides like a warning and an error, so we are doing a very loose mapping there and saying that providing a high severity from this tool is not really accurate just because we don't have a better resolution there. So we can use more wishy-washy language, but if we're trying to target AppSec people who are aiming for a more compliant framework, like we need an audit if any severity comes in with a level of high. I don't know if we can really guarantee that that means anything. So it's still dependent on the underlying data our analyzers provide, and that right now is not great. So I'm not really sure that I feel like this is kind of misleading to add a clear idea of what severities are to these, even though it's really useful.
So I think I agree, but I also want to make it more complicated. I know that I've been discussing, and I know eventually we wanted to get to the point where we kind of allowed people to have their own slightly customized priority instead of severity. I guess I'll just call it priority for now to differentiate. And I think if we were to go there, we could do a mapping project like Andy did originally, where we say we're going to by default map X to Y, here's the behind the scenes for everything, and here's our rationale for it. But then I think we need to start giving people the ability to adjust priority based on their own whatever internal policies, rules, compliance frameworks they're beholden to or whatever. So if we say these CWEs map to whatever and these CVSS scores map to whatever, they could adjust that. And so we could have like in the ideal way end state, somebody could actually click on it and see like the tool output blah. We modified that based on your magic sauce and our magic sauce and got this. So people would actually be able to see that original thing if they clicked into like a full view. But I know that there's no way we can do that on like a quick simplified view. Anyway, that's where my brain's going.
So in that case, we need to do a full audit first.
Which Andy basically did a while ago because we had madness. We now have organized madness, which is not great, but it's still way better than it was.
So is there an issue is that what the link is up top, Thomas, that Isaac started with? Because I feel like we can easily consume all of the meeting on this one topic, but let's capture it in an issue.
Yeah. Isaac has done us the courtesy of putting an MR together that tries to capture what it means to be critical, high, medium, low, etc. And that's probably the artifact by which we start this conversation, but it'll certainly graduate to an issue if it's not one that we already have. The candidate that comes to mind for me is the CWEs, the secures currency. But that might be, I may be guilty of overloading that initiative with this idea of rationalizing severity.
I think there's a bunch in the backlog that could apply, so it might make sense to make a new one that references them instead of overwhelming them.
I think that's definitely the case here, because just about all the discussions we're having are on, there's a lot to discuss about severity. I think that just to refocus the discussion on the MR Isaac opened, can we safely say that when we report a high severity, it means this specific range of CVSS scores? Like that's essentially what we're trying to solve right now, which is not what we should do with severity or what are next steps there, but is there a way of documenting what severity means right now across our tools? And if that's solvable, then it should happen in the merge request. And if not, we'll close it and have to deal with it in a different way.
Like you said, for some, there's not a great underlying tool, so we may not be able to be quite as precise as he's aiming for in this MR, but at least we should be able to say, for all tools except this one, this applies. For this tool, we just had to YOLO.
Brian or Matt, would you like to speak to the items you added, or was it safe, or may we move on since we're running up on time?
Sure, I can say something real quick. One thing, what I wrote in the document was that if we start, overriding the output of the underlying tool, then suddenly we have to consider all the outputs that the tool might give us. And that seems like a lot of work to take on unless we make the end user responsible for that. Another thing I'm thinking is, I haven't written it in the document yet, but should this be tied to CVSS at all? Because CVSS is highly contextual, and there's all the different parameters, and it highly depends on the context of the vulnerability. So should we maybe come up with our own definition that doesn't reference CVSS?
We kind of already dug that hole and are stuck in it. We're already doing the mapping. And you're right, it's not contextually aware, which is where a lot of these other discussions that Thomas and I were referencing that exist in the backlog have stemmed from, in that it is imprecise for various customers. So we need a secondary mechanism for them to customize it to their situation.
For the sake of time, there's one more item on the agenda that has not been marked read-only. So this one's also from Isaac, and it's referencing, okay, we're talking about SAST benchmark, which is a downstream pipeline that is in, well, SAST. So are we using it? And so I see Lucas and I have responded. So Taylor, do you want to speak to your point?
Sure. Yeah, I'll use this. So we do actually bring this benchmark tool up in the context with customers. There are two versions of it. There's one that has vendor names on it. There's one that's completely anonymous. We use the anonymous one when we're talking with customers. I personally don't like showing this graph. It's got too many caveats. It's one Java Spring framework comparison. It's very limited in scope, and it kind of sends the wrong message to customers. We've been telling customers, we're not afraid for you to compare us to your other security vendors. We're available on free. Go create a .com account, add your code, and run it and compare the results. That's the message we've been sending. So unless this tool gets more verbose and has more framework support, I don't think it makes a lot of sense to continue maintaining. I like Isaac's idea here, however, that we can likely turn this tool into something that's more of a benchmark of our own rules. And I think that becomes even more important with our proprietary analyzer vet that's coming. So that's kind of where my head is at.
Okay. we're up on time. I'm going to call out, I mean, just there's two important items that are marked read only below this in the agenda. One's related to a Slack channel that we should all be aware of exists and know what its intended use is. And the other is related to training opportunities, potential training opportunities that are in front of us here in the near term. So we're at time. And so I'm going to declare this to be a fantastic conversation, and wish everybody to have a good rest of your week. And please enjoy a nice long weekend. Talk to you soon.